Hello, and welcome to another fully live episode of Hacking with Friends. My name is Cody Kinsey, and this is my good friend and hacker Alex Lynn.
Hey.
And today we are here to answer your questions live, and also questions that have accumulated on the various YouTube channels we do, both SecurityFWD and Hack5. So welcome to everyone who is in the live chat today. We are experimenting again with our slightly later time, where we get to be a little bit more well-rested and get some time to prepare some, I think, better questions. And if you like it, let us know, because usually we were a couple hours earlier when we would do this, and we're definitely a bit later now. And I like it. If you guys like it too, let us know, because we're experimenting with this time. But we are going to be doing our other live stream on Friday at the same time, so you can catch it at the regular earlier time. So, all right, let's go ahead and get started. And I wanted to say hello to everyone in the chat, especially Zam. Thank you very much for joining us today. We've got some great questions we're going to go through, and a lot of these are related to some of the videos that Alex has been putting out on Hack5. So, Alex, what videos have you been doing lately on Hack5? I understand you've been covering some Hack5 products.
Yeah, I started with the Bash Bunny recently, but I want to move towards a few others like the Wi-Fi Pineapple or a few of the more popular products. Do you want to take a look at those questions?
Sure. Well, we can start off with one. So if
peanut butter or chocolate? That's the first question.
Okay, well,
actually.
First off, we need to, of course, address this controversy, peanut butter or chocolate. So, Alex, I believe you would die.
Yeah, I would die if I had peanut butter, as well as about 13 other different various foods.
Don't make it easy for your enemies. So let's just say peanut butter is not Alex's favorite. So no. I think that this is a trick question for him, because one of them is just like, do you feel like dying? For me, I would just pick chocolate because, out of solidarity, I guess.
Thank you.
Why not both, Michael? Okay, yeah, and then Michael's weighing in saying he wants both. He doesn't want to, he refuses to pick. Okay, well, thank you for that initial question. I think that we're off to a good start. Let's go ahead and switch over to my screen, and we can look at Alex in copy files from an unlocked computer in seconds with the Bash Bunny, which is obviously using the Bash Bunny, a really cool Hack5 tool. Alex, what is the Bash Bunny?
It's a little hot plug attack type tool that looks like a regular USB stick thing. So you can basically plug it into a computer. It'll run pre-programmed keystrokes, so it'll pretend to basically be a USB keyboard. Trick the computer into thinking it's a regular keyboard, but then go ahead and type out basically anything. So it can type out like malicious code to inject, pretend to do stuff by opening up terminal, all sorts of stuff like that. And even on the new Bash Bunny, there's like integrated features like Bluetooth, which you can use to detect when certain phones are nearby, and then be able to run certain types of attacks like this.
Yeah, so that's really a lot it can do. Does the Bash Bunny do Ethernet too? I don't know.
It can emulate Ethernet. So like if a computer is turned off, there's like one attack it can do where it can emulate being a USB Ethernet device, and since the computer will still take input from these devices, since it thinks it's passing over regular internet, it's able to basically run attacks while the computer is completely turned off.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So, all right, so the first question is, does it work with Windows? I think your example was using Linux.
Linux, yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, I mean, the Bash Bunny works with Windows. My script that I demonstrated specifically doesn't, but there's ways that you can modify it to run with Windows. You would just have to change basically like the key modifiers to pop up terminal, and then also the commands that you would use would have to be for CMD instead of Bash.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, there's not... probably wouldn't have much luck launching a terminal window on a Windows computer.
Right.
But I mean, you could adapt it for PowerShell or CMD or something,
right.
And then you would be able to do basically the same thing. All right, so yes, it does work with Windows. And in fact, a community member responded and said, yes, it does. The program you run is different and a little bit more complex to exfiltrate data, but it absolutely does work. So thank you also, because that is the right answer. All right, so same video. This question, though, is different. This one is... if there are a lot of pictures to copy, the terminal will stay open for a long time before exiting because it exists after the CP command is... because it exists, I think they meant exit. Exists. After the CP command is executed. Also, instead of using and, you should use semicolon because and works only if the previous command didn't get any errors. If there's an error while copying one of the files, it won't do the exit part. That is super, really good advice. So one of the things that you can be really, really nitpicky about is the actual payload that you're running on the computer, because depending on what level you're kind of putting this to, you can make sure that it cleans up after itself. You can make sure that it will never, ever leave anything else open on the screen, which honestly, if you're creating a payload where you're a hacker or red teamer and you want to attack a system, the bare minimum is making sure that nothing is left open on the screen after you run your attack. If there's a bunch of windows sprayed all over the place and stuff, and you leave a bunch of junk open, the odds that someone is going to notice the attack go up substantially. So some of what these people are talking about in some of the this and some of the other questions were just ways of making it more hidden and make sure that nobody can detect that you ran this attack. So making sure that it's resistant to errors or faults or edge cases is really another part of this attack, because you're probably, well, almost definitely not going to get a chance to test on this computer you're about to attack. So if there's an edge case and there's an error while copying over a particular file, then in this case, Alex's script sounds like it probably would have stopped, failed, and not run the part that actually is important for it to run. So bash syntax is really important, and here we learned a little bit of a lesson about how if we use and instead of the semicolon, it'll only do the next command if there's no errors.
Yeah, this is true, and I didn't catch the last part because I forgot that Linux command operates in that way besides being just a Boolean operator to like combine two statements. So I didn't catch that part. But there's also like levels to exfiltrating data, and also like how you can hide the processes that you run by using the bash bunny or similar attack methods. There's of course ways where you can like hide the terminal and stuff like that, but I figured it'd be a little bit complicated to be able to hide that, and you also can't really get good feedback on the bash bunny after this command is executed because it's not able to like check live when the command is finished running and give you a visual indication, since it's basically just acting as a keyboard.
Yeah. I mean, there's some ways you could. There's some ways you could try to script the bash bunny to like, maybe check its file system to see if a file
exists. That's what I was thinking, like have it write a file to the bash bunny itself, because the bash bunny basically has an integrated computer inside of it that can like read and do like file input output on its own internal storage. So I was thinking of having it like write progress to the bash bunny, have it be able to like check that file and see like when it's finished copying over.
Yeah, that would be a pretty smart way out of this, because like all of these are really important things for anybody who's writing a payload and wants to understand like, how do I write a good payload? Well, a good payload has to be simple, it has to be fast, and it has to be resistant to detection. So this is a couple ways in which that initial payload maybe fell a little bit short. But again, we didn't want to do something that was so complicated that it would take forever to explain. This is a relatively simple example, and it's great that some people are pointing out ways that it could be better. And in this case, I think that this response is probably one of the best ones that we got, because it's very informative and like it genuinely suggests ways of doing this better. A lot of people are just like, did not like. I was just like, okay, like I'm sorry. But this one is just like, hey, like this is actually something that would make your script even better. And that lets us know the next time we do one of these scripts, we are going to try to show it the right way and make sure we use the correct bash syntax and stuff. So yeah, really good to know. And thank you to all members of the community who submit feedback like this. If you have a specific piece of feedback we can use to make the video better or make our next video better, we love this sort of thing. It's our favorite stuff to get. So you can see a lot of other people upvoted this as well. And we really like seeing people trying to make the stuff that we do better. So thank you so much for dedicating some knowledge to us on that.
I do want to try to make some craftier payloads, but for a payload that I wrote literally before shooting the video, I guess it passes.
Yep. Yeah, and so another comment on the same video, and I have to pause you at some random time. There we go. Okay, I'm also let me also bring up the chat. So if hello, everybody's still in the chat. But we'll switch over to you in just a second. I promise I'm paying attention to you. I see all of your stuff. So nice explanation. Next time it would be a good addition to show how you could set up the micro SD for looting more data and simultaneously for the bunny to show up on the victim's PC as a normal USB stick. While the victim is copying from the USB drive, the script has more time to loot larger amounts of files. Great demo.
Yeah, I was thinking of doing the internal storage, but I figured for someone who's like micro SD storage. But I figure for someone who like just got this right out of the box and they don't want to have to do any extra configuration or be able to tool around with more unnecessary features, I wanted something as basic as possible. And this was really the easiest sort of setup that I could do. But yeah, I'll make sure to do that for upcoming videos. Yeah,
this seems like a free episode idea, like setting up the SD card and using it to loot extra files while you're doing your main payload.
Yeah, that's what I like about the Mark II Bash Bunny. It's now that it has like integrated Bluetooth and also additional storage that you can add on, that definitely makes it a step up from the last revision. And there's a lot more cool features that I could cover.
All right, I'm going to switch over to the chat. So I think I saw a question. And that was, hey, I was wondering, is there a possible way to create a do-it-yourself OMG cable? I have used an AT-Tiny 85 for a cheaper option of a rubber ducky, so I'm wondering if that is possible. I imagine yes. Knowing MG a bit, he loves to, start with a prototype that's like based off of like something that you can easily get, and then make it more and more and more niche as you go down. So I'm sure if you wanted to create a rough version of this, you could absolutely do it. The capability is definitely there. Are you going to have a good time doing it? Well, I hope that you like surface mount soldering, because the whole point of the OMG cable, if you haven't heard of it, is to create a malicious cable that allows you to run attacks from literally what looks like a charging cable, because in most USB cables, there's actual circuitry in there that can be abused. So I actually have one on the way, which should be here pretty soon. I think it's like a USB Type-C to USB Type-C, which, can you imagine how small that is? It's going to be absolutely tiny. So just keep in mind that the form factor really here is really as small as possible is what this is. And for anybody that's done soldering, you know that as small as possible means surface mount soldering. It means you're going to need to be placing components with little tiny tweezers or finding a machine to do it for you. So yes, you can absolutely do this project by yourself if you wanted to, but it does require more skills than I would say than most projects that you would want. Like, for example, using an AT-Tiny to run an attack, that's great, but like it can be as big as you need it to be. And there's no form factor it's really fitting into, except maybe like, the USB stick, that like is really an analogy here, because USB sticks are pretty big and the AT-Tiny is pretty small. Whereas with this, you're going to be packaging hardware into literally a charging cable, which is not, it's going to look like this, like maximum. It's really not that much space. So if you feel confident in your ability to solder stuff on a surface mount level, then like you can definitely try it out. If you do not, then it certainly makes this whole prospect a lot more complicated, because this is not much room to fit all that electronics into. So I would say, like, is the project like super complicated and crazy? No, it's not. Is it electronically difficult to assemble? Yes, definitely. So if you are itching for some surface mount soldering work, then yeah, you can totally do this yourself. But again, it is not something that I think beginners could do very easily, just because of the size of the components, how many of them there are, and the fact that the end factor really does need to fit inside of a charging cable to emulate the project. So
yeah, having seen like the earlier prototypes of it too, it's definitely not pretty and doesn't really fit inside of the USB cable. I think by the time you come up with like a form factor you could assemble yourself, it'd probably be more money than buying like an OMG cable.
And also thank you, Justin Grant, for appreciating our content. We really like bringing interesting topics to the hacker community, and you guys always teach us lots of great things in these Q&A sessions as well. So yeah, you're welcome, and thank you for being here. So all right, we have a very divisive question from John Gousset, and that is I have a question: Nano or Vim?
Personally, a Nano guy, because like you'll just find that Nano's installed on most machines. I've learned how to work my way in and out of using Nano and all of the custom like key commands and macros and stuff like that with it. I do like Vim. I've used it like maybe once or twice, although I do have problems exiting Vim.
Yeah. For me, I like to use Microsoft Word 1995. I think that it's the best text editor, and I like to program in it as well. So it's been a little difficult porting it to newer versions of like Linux, like Ubuntu, but I found that running Wine is a perfectly fine way to get up and running with Windows 1995. Microsoft Word is a great way to get started with programming. If you are looking for a good text editor, I highly recommend it. I feel like a lot of hackers want to say this, but they're like embarrassed, but I'll be the first to say it. Like the 1995 version of Microsoft Word is definitely the ultimate, I would say, text editor.
I can't disagree with that.
Yeah, as a secondary option, I have Nano set as the default on my computer. I know how to use Vim. I have friends who like have whole Vim setups where like they refuse to touch a computer until they download. I'm talking about Brandon. Until they download their custom super special Vim profile, install it, and then they have like an IDE set up because like Vim has been customized to the absolute max. If you are that guy, then Vim is for you. I am not that guy. So I'll just use Nano if it's available.
That's just like a general editor. Something like VS Code, I find.
Oh my god, I can't believe that Zam said that Vim is for boomers. It is not for boomers. It's for huge nerds. It's people who like control.
I think there's an overlap between boomers and huge nerds.
There might be. I mean, there's an overlap between huge nerds in every demographic. So, all right. That was a very divisive question. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to get everybody riled up. I asked once and got a 2-hour lecture on why Vim is great. Yeah, that's why I'm saying this is a dangerous topic. You know that right now someone in this chat is typing, and in about 10 or 15 minutes we're going to get this much text about why Vim is the best text editor.
This is getting too political.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. Let's move on. I'm going to go ahead and grab a question from... Actually,
you want me to pull up a question? All right.
Yeah, why don't you go ahead and pull up a question?
Cool. Ooh, this one's on my Bash Bunny video. Please do some videos with Wi-Fi Pineapple.
Ah, that was one of mine too.
There aren't many good ones out there. Yeah, I haven't messed around with the Wi-Fi Pineapple too much, but I'm considering it because there honestly isn't that much documentation on how, or rather videos on how to use a lot of these products. But I think the Wi-Fi Pineapple is definitely one of the most prevalent and most used HackFi products. I'd be really interested in covering it.
Yeah, so short story about me and the Wi-Fi Pineapple. I was like trying to set it up. I like plugged it in, and then I kind of got distracted, and I was just like, this thing is taking too long to set up. So I just like left it, and I went about my day, and I started like, I remember I tried to connect to Wi-Fi, and I noticed that a Wi-Fi network that had been dead or gone for like maybe 3 years was suddenly at full strength in my apartment. So it's just like, nice. What is going on? So because it was a neighbor's network that, like, long story, she had to change it because like someone broke into it or whatever. But you know, she had to get a new Wi-Fi network, and I was just like, why is this here? Like, what is happening? So it turns out the Wi-Fi Pineapple had detected an old printer in my neighbor's apartment that was calling out continuously forever for this old Wi-Fi network that didn't exist anymore, and it was automatically running a karma attack, which I had not set it to do. It just decided like, let's get it, and started creating a fake Wi-Fi network that was automatically created in response to probe requests from an old device. So like this thing just started like running attacks before I was even ready for it to run attacks, and it scared me because I was just like, is there a van outside my house right now? Like, what is going on? So, I mean, that was one of the times where I was just like, I am obviously under attack. Like, I either, like, did something wrong or, like, someone is hacking me right now. And I was like, oh, it's that Pineapple. And then I unplugged it and the Wi-Fi network went away. So, yeah, setting up the Pineapple can be a confusing, surprising, or scary experience if you don't know what you're doing. So it would be really great if Alex could, you know, maybe come up with a video on doing that. Maybe not how to frighten yourself badly with it, but
that thing's just like eager to fight right out of the box.
Exactly, it's just ready to go.
Nice.
All right, let's take it.
I remember there being custom firmware for the USB rubber ducky that allowed a payload to be run while it was in mass storage mode. Is there any advantage in using the Bash Bunny over a solution like that? Yeah, so using that on the USB rubber duckies, since it's not like inherently a USB, or rather a smart device as the Bash Bunny is, that requires you to like program and flash a whole bunch of stuff to the USB rubber ducky, because I think it's using just a regular like Atmega 32U4 microcontroller, which doesn't have like or rather the Bash Bunny has built-in features like a Linux machine that's actually integrated with it, so you're able to upload files like directly to the operating system instead of having to like completely flash over new firmware to this chip and like completely overwrite the way it inherently works just to get files to be uploaded. So basically the Bash Bunny allows you to like directly drag and drop files onto it, like the payload that I demonstrated.
Yeah, and I know, like, one thing that I would say is kind of similar to that is like the ESP8266, technically you can hack it to do like a human interface device mode, but it's not like officially supported, and it works terribly, and like it like, so there are projects that do it. But all the people I've worked with, like when I worked with Stefana on like the Wi-Fi duck, you know, we were talking about whether or not we could integrate all this capability into a single chip, and it was just like, no, like it works it's such a hack, and it's like so unreliable.
Having a bit thing doesn't really work.
Yeah, exactly. Like just because technically it can do it doesn't mean that it's a good idea.
Right.
Just for the sake of the experience of the person using it. So just something to keep in mind.
I think generally for like automation type stuff where you don't like need to hide the fact that it's designed for keystroke injection, I think the Bash Bunny definitely takes the cake as like the better automation tool. Because like, yeah, the USB ducky is inconspicuous. It looks like a regular flash drive, but it's not all too practical compared to the Bash Bunny.
Yeah, and I have to say, I really do like the Wi-Fi duck as a platform. My favorite thing about the Wi-Fi duck is it offers up a Wi-Fi interface for you to control this human interface device, so you can write a script on your computer that continually says, hey, run the Windows payload. And as soon as it powers up, you might not have had any payload selected. You just know, oh, that's a Windows computer, I'm going to hack it. You can go to your computer, start it like basically getting ready to trigger the payload, and as soon as you plug in the Wi-Fi duck and it turns on, it'll automatically trigger whatever saved payload you have on it. And you can have 20 saved payloads on it and select whichever one you want. So, which is why I think it's really cool compared to any product really. It's just kind of its own thing.
Yeah, the Wi-Fi interface is unique and really cool.
Yeah, that's one thing I like. So, but I believe that you can now do triggering over a Bluetooth interface in the Mark II Bash Bunny, right?
Oh yeah, you can.
Yeah,
so like geofencing, which I mentioned earlier. So if devices are like in and out of proximity, you can use that to basically run whatever attacks you have saved to it.
Yes. Oh, so one thing Alex was saying, hi Alex. One thing Zam was saying is that the ESP32S2 can also do HID emulation natively, and it absolutely can. So we have been making a special version of our Wi-Fi Nugget, of which I happen to have one right here, which has the ESP32S2 instead of the ESP8266 plugged into the back. And what that means is that it can take USB Type-C. It has native USB. It'll show up as a USB drive that you can drag and drop files to in order to add files to the file system. It's super, super cool. So the native capability of the chip really means that you can not only run HID attacks right from it, which we haven't even touched actually.
No, we haven't.
Those versions of the Wi-Fi Nugget actually will support some Wi-Fi monitoring. I'm not sure about packet injection, but they would also support being able to run HID attacks, which is super cool because there's lots of them out there. So yeah, sometimes like having a board that actually supports this natively can be a huge step forward with what it's capable of doing, and that's why we're excited about the ESP32S2. It's a really cool board.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to go to this one that's on your video, and for this anime face says, it leaves no trace. It does leave a trace in the shell command history.
First off, addressing the anime face, I really don't like it.
I'm glad it's not sweaty, but I also find the angle inappropriate. Are you going to answer the question? Are you still looking
waiting
at
for the
face?
replies to.
Oh, no.
I wasn't that intrigued by that. I mean, maybe I am, but I wouldn't tell you.
All right.
Leave no trace. It does leave a trace in the shell command history.
How do you address these allegations, Alex?
Okay, this is true. I did kind of overlook that, but I mean, as a basic script that I created, there's like a lot more pitfalls to it besides just it leaving command history. But yeah, there are ways that you can erase history. I forget exactly how, but I think you can just use the history command followed by like clear something in Linux.
Yeah, so there's definitely ways to obfuscate this further. Again, this goes back to people giving us feedback on our our demo scripts, which we really, really do appreciate because we want to create a good script that covers the stuff that a pen tester would absolutely want to cover on their script. So this is valid feedback, despite the voice you read it in, and despite the suspicious anime face of this profile.
Hey,
yes,
I feel like the ellipses was kind of passive-aggressive, so I had to read
that's
it
what
that
it
way.
was. That's what it was. It was the ellipses. That's actually not what an ellipses is for. I understand lots of people misuse it, but people read it as passive-aggressive. So if you don't have part of the sentence that's been omitted, then don't use the ellipses. Anyway, that is a great comment. So we are going to improve our bash scripts,
Sure.
right, Alex?
Yeah.
To make sure that they try to do things like be a little sneaky, but when we're just demonstrating the capabilities of the Bash Bunny, again, we don't want to get so complicated that we start getting people confused. Because it really is a lot of setup, maybe not that much setup, but it really is a lot to get someone from no knowledge of the Bash Bunny to running their first payload. So we got to work with what we have. But it would just be one line, I believe, to just clear the history and remove that part of the evidence that's left behind. But very, very good observation. So you got caught.
No. Yeah, I tried to make it more of like a Bash Bunny setup oriented video rather than go too much into like the semantics of how Bash scripting works and stuff like that.
Yeah, and we can focus more on payloads in the future. If you guys want to see awesome like Bash scripting payloads that Alex does, then we can do that, and they will be a little bit more focused on the Bash script itself. All right, let me check back on the chat. Acts like the grammar police today. It's just the ellipses. Like, how are we supposed to understand that you're not being mean if you're, sending us the ellipses?
Yeah. Also, it's in quotation marks too. It leaves no trace.
Yeah.
So aggressive.
So one question we got was, what's the minimum requirements for landing my first pen test job? I would say you need to, depend. All right, that's kind of a complicated. If you're assuming that you're a generalist, meaning you're not someone that specializes in one, like reverse engineering or whatever, then I can give you some generic advice. But, really, I should point out that if you are a specialist in something, then your part of the kill chain might just be very specialized, and what you would need to be is just specialized in your area and really good at what you do. Now, if you were more of a generalist, then I would say you need to know about networking, like at an absolute minimum level, and having some network certifications would probably certainly help your cause if you wanted to let people know that even if you haven't done a lot of offensive stuff, you understand how networks work, you maybe know how to manipulate them, and you know how to trace back problems if something's not working. I would say also knowing some of the basics like Metasploit and the other tools that are used very, very commonly by red teams would be a really good way of convincing people you know what you're talking about when they're talking about doing like a red team engagement or doing pen testing. Knowing how to do scanning, and then very importantly, knowing how to run reports and hopefully talk to people. All of those are skills that are highly prized. So if maybe you have people skills because you came from another industry, then being able to talk to clients might be the thing that they have you do because nobody else on the team knows how to do it and they're no good at it. There's lots of different ways you can fit in a pen testing or red team situation. So it really depends on exactly what company you're trying to work with and what they specialize in and what you personally want to specialize in. But again, I would say networking is probably something where if someone didn't know networking, I would hesitate to hire them unless they were really awesome at something else.
Yeah, I agree with that. And also having like sort of credentials to back you up, like having worked jobs in like maybe network engineering, IT, or something like that, on top of having things like certifications like maybe the CCNA or CompTIA or something like that, definitely helps like build up your portfolio if you're looking to get into pen testing.
So one really good question that is actually quite controversial just came up in the chat. So is it really realistic to crack WPA2 using AirCrack? So every time we do a video on cracking passwords, somebody comes in the chat and they're like, this is just like a dictionary attack. I hate this. Kill yourselves. And we're just like, why? It's perfectly valid and scalable. So here's my response to that. Like nowadays, you can go and get an Amazon cluster that has GPUs and all this other stuff super, super easily. It does not cost much money to rent an incredibly powerful GPU for a period of time. So assuming that the person who made the password doesn't have like the absolute longest password ever, if it's an 8-character password, even if it's totally random, it is no longer difficult to break that. So if this person is having their password, their Wi-Fi password, short enough to remember, which almost everyone does, or it's a predictable pattern that a manufacturer does, which lots of manufacturers do, then it's entirely possible to rent the computing power to crack this if that person really wants to get in. And they have like $13 to $50 to throw at some Amazon like virtual instances.
Right.
So I would say people like poo-poo these attacks all the time, like, oh, it wouldn't work, but it's like, no, like you can scale these attacks, you can add real brute forcing to them, and it's really difficult to get around the massive amount of computing power you can bring to bear for relatively little money on these sorts of problems. So if you're one of those people who's still talking smack about these sort of brute forcing attacks and whether or not they're practical in WPA2, I got news. It's now very easy with anyone with even a small amount of money and a debit card to be able to rent these services out and crack really whatever they want, provided it's feasible. Now, again, if you have an absolutely crazy long password that like is completely random, stored in a password manager, and it's as long as your arm, this maybe isn't going to be very practical. But are you going to be anyone's favorite when it comes to them asking you to use the Wi-Fi? No, they're going to hate you because it's going to take forever. So it's always the security versus convenience. Most of the time, I would say 70% of the time or more, people will choose convenience and they will keep the password totally crackable. And I don't even need some Frankenstein like Amazon cluster to go after it. I can really just use a computer and focus the attacks on things that are more likely. So, and with data breaches now too, you can see the previous passwords of people, provided you have some information about them, like their email address. So I could go back and look up in breaches what Alex has picked for some of his previous passwords that would greatly reduce the complexity I would need to go through in order to figure out what types of passwords that person chooses. So never underrate social engineering, never underestimate OSINT and being able to go after these passwords in other ways and maybe look through data dumps, whether or not there's been a previous password, and never underestimate how much power someone can bring to bear with the resources that are available for rent on the internet. Because that probably wasn't the case, way back when, that you could just rent this much computing power for low cost, but now you absolutely can.
Yeah, honestly, and like just looking around at nearby Wi-Fi networks, you'll more than likely still see like default ones set up like My Spectrum Wi-Fi or like TP-Link or stuff like that. And they're usually using like default passwords that follow like some sort of preconceived like string or something like that. And I did a video on how you could basically, assuming that you have permission to recover this password.
Yes.
I did a video on how you could use Google Colab to even help facilitate in recovering some of these passwords. And being able to use Linux commands like hashcat or aircrack in order to recover these things.
Also very controversial. We had a lot of people telling us, don't abuse Colab. But yeah, I mean, there are internet resources out there available both for free and also for pay that can really get through hashes quickly. And Sean Lee also says that this is it's for a let's see. Okay, he's following the tutorial for WPA2 for a school presentation. Okay, just don't hack your school. Make sure you have permission, because this is one of those attacks that's super, super easy to detect if you're doing like deauthentication attacks and stuff like that. At least when it comes to grabbing the handshake. If you're just sitting back and waiting for somebody to join the network and grabbing that handshake, that attack is undetectable because you just sit back, capture the handshake, submit it to your AWS cluster, and you're good to go. So, if you're not doing active deauthentication, then that is arguably legal, at least in the United States, to intercept like a hash that's put out in plain text over the air and then attempt to reverse it. That's not, as far as I know, that's not a crime, which is kind of cool actually.
I also have
other places that is a crime.
I also have used aircrack practically to crack networks that I have access to, of course.
So Rational Bushcraft says, WPA2, try all number brute force 10 numbers. A huge number of people use their phone number. You would not believe how many businesses use either their address or their phone number as their Wi-Fi. Like when we do audits of this, it is overwhelming how many will just do that. So yes, if you just try like phone numbers, for example, or addresses even, you can find that a lot of businesses will use these and a lot of other people will do it just because it's so easy to remember. Really, really interesting.
We were literally in that crepe shop like a month ago, and we put in their phone number for the Wi-Fi, and
I was like, I hope this is the guest network.
Yeah.
And fortunately we was. Later we checked the receipt, and yes, that was available for guests. It was on there, but it was so predictable. We just guessed, and it worked.
Ridiculous. Yeah.
So good. Sean assures me that no, hacking his own Wi-Fi for the project and bringing the results to class. Okay, good, Sean. I just don't want you to get in trouble because if your school's IT networking person is cranky, he might think he finally has something to do that day, and that you are attacking the school. So you don't want to do that. All right, so let's go over to another question again on your Bash Bunny video. So popular. I might pick another one soon. Or just use a bad USB. The Molduino is good.
Hey,
so what's the difference
between competitor's product?
Well, I mean, okay. Let me just say, yes, we work for Hack5, but I'm also friends with Jonty.
No, I love them.
And Jonty's super cool. We've had several very long conversations on the phone because we just forget that just time is passing and just talk about like making these sorts of things. And Jonty's super cool. Would I say that the Molduino is a substitute for this particular attack? Like, probably not. Just because, like, is there an SD card and, like, internal storage? And it's not, like, a whole-ass Linux computer, to be honest.
Right.
Like, so because, like, the Bash Bunny is actually it is a Linux computer, and the Molduino is a microcontroller. The difference is that the Bash Bunny has an operating system. You can install programs on it. You can do all sorts of very creative stuff and rely on things like Bash scripting to work. On the Molduino, you are stuck because it can't do its own, like, anything except a fire and forget kind of one-time script. Can't react to anything. It can't really do very much, like, once it's been deployed.
Yeah, it's kind of like the rubber ducky in a way.
It is very much like the rubber ducky. Yeah. So that's one thing to keep in mind, the difference between microcontrollers and, like, computers, like the Bash Bunny. The Bash Bunny literally has, like, a single board computer in it, whereas the Molduino or like the USB rubber ducky are much more on par with each other. So I wouldn't compare the Bash Bunny to the Molduino. I would compare, like, the USB rubber ducky to the Molduino, because that's, that's what they do. But I mean, technically you could, like, push the Bash scripting portion, like, more over to, like, the victim computer, and there's other stuff you could try to do, but you really lose a lot of capabilities with this. So I would say they're not really equivalent. All right, I'm gonna pick a different one.
It's a lot of Bash Bunny questions.
Yeah, let's see. This one's on Hackbyte. So this one was our capture Wi-Fi passwords from smartphones with a half handshake attack. This only works if the password is listed in wordless. Again, see, this is that person. I refer to my previous statements on Wi-Fi cracking using AWS instances, Google Colab, or community-based distributed projects that allow you to upload a hash and then have other researchers running a Python program crack it in a distributed fashion, which is beautiful, but I won't tell you any more about.
It seems like people have just discovered how password cracking works almost. It's crazy.
Yeah.
You have to have a word list?
Yeah, or a random generator, but yeah. So this was on our Hack5 video, CircuitPython setup on the ESP. You might notice that this has a little bit of a glitch. So that's because this is a holographic sticker, and the way that this was processed causes it to, like, pulse like lightning. And some astute viewer said, "Where did you get that chicken decal that lights up like lightning?"
That's pretty fancy.
Yeah, so I am so sorry to tell you guys that this is in fact, it is a holographic sticker, and you can find one on spacehoon.com, I believe. But unfortunately, this glowing action does not actually happen all the time. That is, you gotta have a malfunctioning green screen for that to work. So I'm so sorry to give you the bad news on this.
Look how indignant you look here.
I look really offended. I'm so sorry to give you the bad news, Daylon Locks. But yeah, you can get the holographic version on spacehoon.store. However, you cannot get the lightning version because that is custom. We have to do that with effects just to wow you. Little Easter egg for you right there. All right, so now we have defeating facial recognition. This was one we did a while ago, but this is honestly my favorite video, and you should go watch it because it's great. And the comment is just, I can see why the FBI was worried about juggalos. They're basically untraceable. So in this episode, we decided to... I am so sorry. I forgot about this still. We've decided...
Is that Michael?
Yes, this is Michael.
No, this is proper Bigfoot hunting attire.
Yeah. So we decided to have our friend Vic tell us about the different ways we might be able to defeat facial recognition. One of the things she suggested was that we put makeup on in a way that is really is very contrasty and basically makes it so it looks like juggalo makeup. And when we did our test, we found that in fact it did a pretty good job of defeating facial recognition here. So also this is just like a typical Saturday night at our house.
Nice, yeah.
Everyone just trying to ignore
the Juggalo get up.
Michael getting ready for his night out at the Juggalo concert. The Insane Clown Posse concert would be the correct, or the Juggalo, the Gathering of the Juggalos. Whatever. But anyway, so yes, the question was, are Juggalos untraceable? Well, yeah. So there's a lot of news going around about how if you wore makeup like this, it would mess up a lot of facial recognition systems. Yes, it does mess up a lot of facial recognition systems because it messes up where the lights and the darks are. But there are more sophisticated ones that can absolutely see through this, and we tested a couple that used a bit more information to try to make the determination and see whether or not they would work. And basically what we found out was the Juggalo makeup did a pretty good job, but it didn't work on everything. The more processing power you apply to solving this problem, the less effective it is. I think that this is where our results are. We have this. All right, so we can see this is still able to determine that Michael's Michael in spite of this. Whereas I should give some context. So in the screen, we are seeing two different facial recognition programs running at the same time. The one on the left is based on a microcontroller. So this is an ESP32, if you're interested, running its facial detection and facial recognition. Now, this makeup is messing up the facial detection, which means it's not even trying to recognize Michael. It can't even determine that there's a face on the screen. So for a microcontroller-based recognition system that's not querying a database, that only has a couple loaded onto it, then it can't even detect his face. But for a Python-based system that's able to take a higher resolution image and do some more processing with it and look for more distinctive things like the eyes and other points like the chin, then this becomes a much more complicated thing to try to mess up. So we were able to see that no, juggalos are not invincible. If you throw money at the problem, I'm sure things like Clearview AI and stuff like that could probably get in there and figure out who a juggalo was. But I will say that it's impressive that there are some makeup styles that do prevent this sort of recognition from working reliably. So I really like this question because I guess it was more of a statement because no, they're not invincible. In fact, in this video, we did show off that we can recognize Michael. And there were some other methods that were a bit more reliable. But this was, again, if you haven't seen this episode, it's one of my favorite Hack5 episodes we've ever done. And you'll learn a little bit about the way that facial recognition works and how you might be able to get away with hiding from it. But during the pandemic, it's not that hard. You just wear a friggin' mask, so sunglasses. So this was our video, the IoT Security Nightmare. This is where Michael happily opens up a bunch of light bulbs and starts controlling them over IoT. And then I was able to access the API for these light bulbs, and over the same network, I was able to start changing them up and basically making them turn on, turn off, turn on, turn off, and take control away from Michael. So after all that explanation, this is the question. Where did you get the LED lights? The blink pattern is cool.
All that set up.
Michael, where did you get the LED lights?
Alibaba.
Wish.com. He got it from Wish.com. All right. So I need to be clear though, the blink pattern of those lights, I'm literally hacking them in order to get them to do that. So I am sending my own custom patterns to the lights and via a Python script, and I can make it do whatever I want. I make it turn different colors. It's actually really cool because somebody figured out how the API call works on this and just published it. So you can just control them, and most of these lights work roughly the same. So yeah, I'm sorry. I guess he said Alibaba? Mm-hmm. Okay. Or Wish.com. I'm sure they have them too. But yeah, so hope you like them because those lights are very fun to hack. I love that when I see them in public places, I immediately know that I can mess with them. So here's a comment on the CircuitPython setup on the ESP32S2. Nice little toy. I first did this.
Can you criticize me for reading my comment in that tone?
I'm sorry.
Right.
Yeah. I did this type of thing on an Arduino years ago, although it didn't have Wi-Fi built in, which makes sense. In fact, I have an Arduino driving a 2x32x16 LED board, great for electronic signs. As you can imagine, the 32x16 boards have a controller as well. So there's only about 7 or 3 wires interface from the Arduino. Adafruit brings us some cool stuff, which I've used numerous times for different projects. So I have to say Adafruit was a big inspiration for me when deciding to make the S2 Nugget. We already had a great board design that worked with the ESP8266, but because we were using the D1 Mini outline and there was a S2 Mini which uses the same footprint, it meant we could just plug this in. But we really had to ask the question, like, should we make this? Like, is it worth it? But looking at everything that Adafruit has done with the ESP32S2 is so impressive. The way they made the customer experience amazing. They made it super beginner friendly. I've just been so impressed with what they've done with it that we decided to make it, and that's kind of the subject of this episode, how to get set up on CircuitPython. But yeah, it's really cool to make projects like this. Alex has been the driving force on this particular project, and I've just been doing some of the programming for the S2 version. But I would say, yeah, not exactly a question, but a lot of good points. And Adafruit is a big inspiration for us because they do lots of cool work and they focus on how to make this all super accessible for anybody that wants to get into programming and controlling hardware. So, and I've already seen some great examples on TikTok of people like learning how to use this stuff and relying on Adafruit hardware to make some really incredible things, like that like feather headdress we showed the other day.
That was crazy.
I would just watch like him have to like go over to a store and like buy an Adafruit board and then like use it in order to fix it because something like got fried. So, or like he got the wrong board. So like lots of people use Adafruits for some really Adafruit products for some really incredible projects that I've seen, and we would love it if people used our board like that too.
They're doing awesome stuff with making hardware really easy to get started with, and I really like what they're doing with CircuitPython for this platform because the ESP32S2 is super powerful, and we're really excited to explore some of its features.
Yes, absolutely. And I'm going to, oh my god, another question on this. Was just Satanic music. Okay, so we, I think actually slightly before Satanic, I apparently are using the same stock music service, and there was like 3 different options, and we were just like, no, yes. And we picked that one, and then immediately after picking it, maybe like a month later, we started getting comments like this over and over and over. So at this point, yes, I'm aware that we and Satanic have picked the same stock music on Hack 5.
Nice.
I'm also totally cool with it. We both paid for it. It's neither of ours. And I like it, right? It's good. But yeah, I also don't think that any of the other samples are good. So we're going to keep using it. But yeah, if you're here to tell us that we're using Satanic's music, we know. Excellent video as always. And I did notice the sick Redia/Lin Lab stickers engraved on the board. Definitely would like to snag one of these to add to the collection. Thank you. Well, these boards absolutely do have some cool PCB art on them. Where's the close-up? Do we have a close-up?
There should be a close-up.
Yeah, somewhere. Oh, yeah, here it is.
Here it is.
So yeah, we put a lot of love into this board, and in particular,
the nugget.
This is a little Easter egg. No, pause, go back. This is a little Easter egg. This cat right here is an almost photorealistic representation of my cat, whose name is Hand Banana, but we call him, Chicken Nugget because he's around that size, and now he's just Nugget. So the Wi-Fi Nugget was inspired by real events, such as the birth of my son, and then we also have Lin Labs, our Redia logo. This was a really fun thing to make. So
such a beautiful board.
Such a beautiful
it's
board.
cat-shaped, has a cat logo. What more could you ask for?
Exactly. I will say I really like the purple on purple version of this. It made the whole thing look like really distinct. So we might end up doing a new run of these that has a purple PCB just because I really like how it looked.
The purple and black contrast and gold looks really cool though.
It does. It does. It looks really cool. So we are selling these on Redia.io. So if you want to pick one up, then only a couple people have bought this initial run. But it's an experiment to see like how many people like this particular board, how many people want to use CircuitPython. And for me, I love CircuitPython, and they just started supporting packet monitoring, which means you can do all sorts of cool Wi-Fi stuff. So stay tuned for some more episodes that I'm going to do on using CircuitPython to do some spooky Wi-Fi things. All right, let's go over to the chat. I just want to see if anybody...
we have some chats.
Yes.
Is it better to use Kali Live USB to save time on virtual machine and just pause state?
I'll let you do that since you've been doing it so often.
Cool. I personally prefer to boot off the USB, because it's just more resources that are like allocated directly to using the operating system rather than like sharing Kali between the operating system that's like running the virtual machine and also Kali at the same time. I tend to find that it crashes a lot and it's just like not as reliable. I think booting off a USB is definitely the way to go, and you can also set up persistent mode. So it can basically store whatever programs you install, any information you might extract or exfiltrate or stuff like that.
Cool. So we have we have two questions from Sean Lee. One of them is whether we've covered using cloud resources to do Wi-Fi cracking. And yeah, we did actually. And no, it's not the analyzing word driving data one. Which one is it?
That's the cloud one, right? I think that's the only cloud cracking one we've done so far.
Oh, is it the analyzing word driving data?
Oh wait, no.
No, it's
What's
not
the question?
One. The question is which video is the one that covers using cloud resources to do Wi-Fi hacking?
Oh no, that would be the Google Collab video.
Yeah, so look for the Google Collab video. That's the one that covers that.
Yeah.
The second question was,
can
can we talk about deauthenticating cameras and hacking local CCTV cameras? So the number one feedback I give people who are like paranoid or security conscious about setting up cameras is making sure that they're not Wi-Fi cameras if they don't want them to be kicked off relatively easily. Now, most of these cameras only support 2.4 gigahertz, so using something like our Wi-Fi nugget, it would be super, super easy to just kick a camera off the network and it would no longer report back to wherever it was streaming to. Now, it might still store on like a local internal card or something like that, so there are some other problems there, but fundamentally the ability to knock a camera offline and stop it from sending any video back to a DVR system is a pretty big problem. So if you're a paranoid person, you probably want to hardline your cameras with Ethernet or something, because that way they can't be deauthenticated and they can't be kicked offline. Cool. So I think we're getting pretty close to the time we have left for questions. Let me see if I can grab any other ones.
Cool. I'll simultaneously pull up another question.
Yeah, please do.
I think this one's coming from my Bash Bunny video. It says, the only thing this device gives you is speed. On an insecure computer, you can do the same thing with a regular USB drive and just manually typing in the commands. What can it do on a screen locked PC? Well, I haven't messed around with this mode yet, but one of the things that we did mention earlier was the ability to emulate USB Ethernet. So I know there are exploits that exist for that allow you to exfiltrate credentials or things like that by emulating this sort of device. So that's one area where it does excel.
All right, so I've got an interesting question. So we did an episode on how to catch a catfish with Redia, where we went over all the different ways that you could catch someone who is catfishing you. So we have a question, and it's just, how do you catch catfishes with a laptop? I mean, my advice would be probably, I understand that catfish is really like cheese, so maybe if you stuffed it with cheese and threw it into a lake, you would attract catfishes, and you could maybe with a net grab one.
Right, reasonable.
I'm assuming that's what you mean. Alex, what would you say?
I would use it to pull up a WikiHow on how to catch catfishes. I'm not a real fisher guy myself, but I'm sure there's guides on how to catch catfishes.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty normal. You attract the fish, you shoot your fish, you get them out of the water, you cook them. I am also not a fisherman, but I'm assuming you shoot the fish and you go take them.
Yeah.
To the barn.
Maybe you pull up a good video that catfishes like to watch.
Yeah. So if you want an idea of how to catch catfishes on a laptop or anything, watch the video that you commented on.
Oh.
Because it actually shows you how. Okay. That's all. I think that's all the questions we can take today. I want to thank everybody who's been with us in the chat, Zam especially for moderating, Sean Lee, and everybody who's asked questions. If we didn't answer your question, make sure to leave it on the YouTube channel. Leave it as a comment, and we will get to it next week. And yeah, we appreciate everyone's questions because we always learn new things, even if it is just stuff like your audio was bad. Yeah, because we'll fix it. Or your script was bad, which we will get on fixing it. So thank you to everyone who hung out with us today. Again, if you're seeing this later, if you want to participate in the Q&A and you want to give us some more questions for next week, make sure to drop your questions. You can leave them on the YouTube channel, or you can send me a message on Twitter, either a comment or whatever, and we will include them. But yeah, I appreciate everyone who submitted questions. If you want to see more great Varonis content, you can check out the Varonis brand channel, where our sometimes co-host Killian is hosting the threat update. And if you want to see more of Alex or myself, you can also check out the Hack5 channel, where Alex regularly publishes ways to break computers.
It's my specialty.
All right. We will see you guys next time. Thank you very much. Have a good one.